Hello and welcome to Degrassi Schools In. I'm Eevee and I have a super special guest that I'm super excited to introduce today. One of our very good friends, Taylor Phillips. Hello and welcome to Degrassi Schools In, Taylor.
Hello.
Hello. I am so glad that you offered to be on this episode because you are somebody who is so fun and funny and chaotic, and this episode has a lot of chaos going on. Chaotic in the best way. I like am self-described as chaos, so that is a compliment from me, I swear.
I appreciate it a lot.
I wanted to start off, I like to get a little bit of background from my guests on their experience with Degrassi Junior High and Degrassi in general. Did you want to give me a little background on how much of Degrassi you've known and kind of where Degrassi Junior High comes into play with that?
Yeah, I didn't start watching Degrassi until my first weekend at college. So the weekend before, like I was 17 turning 18, because I wasn't allowed to watch it when I was younger. And so at this point, up until now, I've only ever seen Next Generation, Degrassi, and Next Class.
Mhm.
It wasn't until you said something that I started watching Junior High. And I feel bad because I did skip Kids of Degrassi Street and I just got straight into Junior High. But now I'm kind of binging that
Yeah.
little section right there.
Well, yeah, I want to brag because you said, as you said, you started watching Degrassi Junior High so that you could be on the podcast. I'm sure it was something that you were always intending to do at some point, but this was kind of the catalyst for you to pick up and binge the first 8 episodes. And I'm very
Yeah.
proud of myself for that. I feel
Thank
like I
you.
influenced you. Yeah, of course. I'm an influencer. I got you too. And no, I think a lot of people skip Kids of Degrassi Street in their watch. So I don't think you should feel bad about that. You'll get to it at some point. Have you seen any episodes of Kids of Degrassi Street?
No, I think I've seen little just snippets here and there since joining like the Patreon and the Discord, just little tiny tidbits, but I
Yeah.
haven't seen very much. I mean, I don't even think I could tell you like a storyline really, besides maybe what the titles are that kind of gives away, like Ida Makes a
Yeah.
Movie kind of gives you a general preface of what's going to happen or what it's about, but that's about as
Yeah.
close as I could get.
Yeah, I've only seen the first 3 episodes of Kids of Degrassi Street, I think. So, like I said, we'll get to it at some point, I'm sure. I've seen little bits and pieces because of the Discord and everything. So, how far have you gotten into Degrassi Junior High now? You said you started binging it. Did you go past the point that we watched?
I have not went past
Oh,
What a
okay.
Night. I stopped there at least for now because I didn't want to start crossing over storylines, especially because you're watching all of it for the first time. So I wanted to stop where I knew conversation would stop.
I appreciate you not wanting to spoil me. I not even like giving yourself the opportunity to spoil me because I know so many of our friends are like trying their best not to spoil me, but it's hard to remember what happened when. So you just
Yeah.
removed the possibility. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So, how do you feel about Degrassi Junior High so far as someone who is experiencing it for the first time?
I'm kind of torn, and I'll be honest. I like
Yeah.
it, but I think because of when it was made versus when I was born, there's so many different things, or like just the culture was different, technology was different. So a lot of it I don't feel as connected to as I do some of the other parts of the series, like
Hmm?
Next Generation or Next Class, because they're more closer to what I've known my whole life instead of things that like maybe I've heard my parents talk about or read in books or something. It just I feel a lot like it's a lot harder for me to connect when it's a totally different world.
Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons why I hadn't watched up until this point is because I honestly don't really go back that much and watch a lot of TV before I was born. I feel like I kind of stick to like maybe a little bit before like late 90s and then 2000s and beyond. I tend to prefer modern media, and Degrassi specifically is so catered to the generation and like that time, teenagers of that time. So it makes sense that you're gonna connect a little bit less to something that wasn't made for you. Like you're literally not the target audience. The target audience was teens in the 80s, and there's still that like those resonant plot lines and those resonant points that are going to like withstand the test of time, but there's always it's gonna relate less because it wasn't made for you, at least in my opinion. Like, and I experienced that too. So you're not alone.
And I think that's part of my problem with like not watching Kids of Degrassi Street, or not knowing if I really even want to. I mean, I
Yeah.
want to, but it's that again. Like I'm gonna even relate less to
Yeah.
the
Well,
younger children.
as somebody who has heard a lot of people who are very passionate about Kids of Degrassi Street talk about why they're passionate about Kids of Degrassi Street, they talk about, oh, I love it so much because it's so much like what I was growing up with and what like it's like me growing up in the neighborhood that I grew up with and all this kind of stuff. And those same people didn't watch Degrassi Next Class or didn't like Degrassi Next Class because it's not made for them. So while I think
Yeah,
it's cool to be able to appreciate the whole span of Degrassi, I think it's a little bit unrealistic to expect anybody of any age to really love the entire series and really like want to rewatch the entire series. I feel like even the creators and like the people who are on the show have their favorite eras. Like it's not none of it is made for
yeah,
everybody. And I think it's really good to have like you on my show because up until this point, I have had either people who grew up loving Degrassi Junior High or are late 20s, early 30s, like Degrassi Kid and James and all of them who didn't grow up with the show but are so passionate about it. So it's nice you're kind of
yeah,
on equal footing with me in a way, and I love that. And I think it's very fun. It'll inspire some fun different conversations, and that's what I'm aiming for is for every episode to be a little bit different and offer something
yeah.
different. So I'm excited to talk to you about What a Night.
Me too.
um
I'm as soon as I watched it, I was like, oh, let's go, let's do this.
I know. I am so glad that you were down. I messaged you and you were immediately down, which is
Oh yeah, I
very reflective of who you are and who I've known you to be since getting to know you, is that you are just down.
let's do it.
Yeah, you're down to have
Yeah.
fun, and I absolutely love that about you. I just wanted to quickly give us the information on this episode. It aired March 15th, 1987. It was written by Yan Moore and directed by Kit Hood, which is the case for a lot of these early episodes. Are you ready to get into the whole What a Night discussion?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay. I am going to go ahead and read a summary, which I'm getting from the Degrassi Wiki. All hail the Degrassi Wiki, our Lord and Savior,
Mhm.
our Bible. I don't know if that's sacrilegious to say.
Preach.
Sorry. Sorry to anybody. Preach. Um, okay. Lucy and Vula become friends, but when the girls go shopping, Lucy reveals that she acquired her fashionable wardrobe by shoplifting. Meanwhile, Stephanie finds herself in an unfavorable situation when she agrees to a rendezvous with a much older TV star. How do you feel about this, the content of this episode? I would say it hashtag goes there. What would you say?
Yeah, it felt like a lot, especially, I mean, a lot of episodes like 1 through 8, they had some littleish go there moments, and then this one was
Yeah.
just like, oh, okay, like
This
that's a
one
lot to
was
unpack.
this one was loaded. Yeah, the other ones had like
Yeah.
little, like I can think of the Joey and oh my gosh, what is his name? I'm only thinking of the actor's name, Craig Driscoll. Joey and what is that? What is the kid's name? He's in the next episode. He's like the focus of the next episode. Um,
Yes, and it's the same
Rick
name
Monroe.
as,
Rick Monroe. Rick
I was gonna
Monroe.
say,
Rick
I was,
Monroe.
yeah, there's another
Same
name, and I should know
as the
that.
shooter. Rick
Yeah,
Monroe and Rick
Rick is my
Murray.
dad's name,
Yes.
so I'm like,
Hi, Rick. Okay. So, yeah, there was the episode with Joey and Rick where he like sees his dad abusing him and all of that kind of stuff. So there's a
yeah,
couple moments that have went there, quote unquote, but this one was like a double whammy of like we got some police station action, we got some motel parking lot action, some inappropriate relationships with a soap opera star. How did you
yeah,
feel about this?
uh, not good. I mean, and it's one of those like, it's not so much a suspenseful show, so it's like, I know this how this is gonna play out. Like I know what's gonna happen, and I want so bad to be wrong, and
Yeah.
knowing like I wasn't, I was, but I wasn't, because I honestly thought at the end that it was going to go further than it did. I'm glad they stopped it where it did.
With Stephanie and
But I
Damon.
was definitely like, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad that they stopped it. But like gearing up for it, I'm like, don't do this, don't do this. Like I'm yelling at my TV and no one's listening. I
Nobody's
don't know
listening.
what to do.
Yeah, Degrassi is one of the only shows I feel like that I watch that makes me want to like scream at my TV to just like stop, stop,
Mm-hmm.
don't do that, don't go there. And I was feeling that way with Stephanie. And I am proud of Degrassi for going there. And she's 14. Like also not that 16 is much better. Like Damon, you're still a weirdo for going for the 16-year-old. I don't know if that's legal in Canada, but like
I hope
still.
not. I hope
I
it's
hope
not.
not.
If
I
not,
really
I
hope
want to
not.
talk to someone.
I would love to talk to Justin Trudeau about that specifically. I don't know if that's his responsibility, but
It's
um
someone's.
it's somebody's. I don't feel like it's legal for a grown man to get with a 16-year-old, but no, I don't. I mean, it's definitely not morally okay. Um,
Yeah,
but no, that was insane to me, and I was not expecting it to go that far at all. I'm glad
yeah.
it didn't go further, but still, like, I think we're kind of just gonna jump around a little bit. So I'm thinking
That's fine.
about the Vula and Lucy storyline and how I love Vula so much, and I just think she's the sweetest little
I do too. I
baby.
think gearing up towards this episode, kind of in the beginning when she's helping earlier in the series when she's helping Stephanie with the like election for school and stuff like that, there were times where I didn't like her,
Mhm.
or not that I didn't like her, but I I was just kind of iffy on her. And I don't think it was until we saw more of her relationship with her dad that I was understanding why she was the way she was. And after a while, I grew to appreciate her character a lot more, especially being that age and kind of having that sanity to her was refreshing to see.
Yeah, she was a good like foil to Lucy and to kind of see how I feel like Vula resents the fact that she, or at least up until this point, kind of resents the fact that her parents are so protective. But then she's able to see what that lack of stability does to Lucy, and I feel like she kind of learns a little bit of a
Yeah.
lesson by the end of this episode of like it sucks to be so controlled by your parents, but also like it's nice to have parents that care, basically, because Lucy doesn't feel like she does, at least, because she is constantly being left alone. So at
Yeah.
least Vula has the parents that are there and like care about her. Sorry, I don't like implying that Lucy's parents don't care, but
Yeah.
I know that, yeah, it's
But they're
complicated.
not there.
They're not there,
Um,
yeah.
and I think that's what made me grow to appreciate Vola more is I did have at the time or growing up, I thought I had the strictest parents in the world. And it wasn't until I was older, I mean 19, 20, 21, that I'm like, it makes so much sense. Like even now, I my siblings will try to come to me like with advice and I'll talk to them like, our parents talk to me. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm on mom and dad's side here. So I think
Yeah.
it's very important for her that she learned at such, or at least kind of had that eye-opening experience at such a young age instead of so much later in life. That way she didn't doesn't necessarily spend the next, 6, 7 years resenting her parents until she's out of the house.
Yeah. And making those mistakes behind her parents' back and all of that. I'm glad that she kind of got that lesson. And I obviously don't know how much we'll see the residual effect of her learning this lesson, but I feel like she was already on a good path, and this is keeping her on that good path. I'm curious if she'll
Yeah.
stray away from Lucy and see her kind of as a bad influence. I really hope not, because Lucy is not a bad kid. She just clearly needs some boundaries and needs some attention and needs some love.
Yeah.
She needs someone to like be around for her. I feel really
Yeah. That and that
bad.
was I felt like that was a good pairing. I mean, when it came to storylines is having one that has way overprotective parents or at least,
Yes.
as a child, it feels super overprotective versus the child whose parents aren't there or always working late. Like I felt like it was a good pairing instead of having
Yeah.
two kids that are that way or each way.
Yeah, if you had like Lucy and Stephanie, I don't think it would have been as interesting of a dynamic because there's not as much like polarity between them and not so much of a difference between their upbringings. I think it was interesting
Yeah.
for Lucy and Vula to kind of see the other side of the coin in a way, even if they weren't fully realizing it. I liked that and I thought that was interesting. And I feel like Lucy in this episode, I always feel like I'm going back to or forward, I guess, to parallels of characters in the future. And I feel like Lucy definitely reminded me of like Jimmy, for example, where when he was having that storyline where he was left at his house all the time and hanging out at Ashley's house and Ashley was sick of him being over there. It would have been cute and it would be cute. I don't know if this happens to see Lucy start going over to Vula's house a little bit. I don't think Vula's parents would accept her, but I kind of wish that they would so that she could have a kind of safe place to go.
Yeah, and I could see them on both sides, not wanting her around and also realizing this child does need someone around. So, I mean, at this point, I think Lula's parents could it's just split 50-50. They could do either or.
Yeah.
And I think I would understand on both sides why they would or wouldn't.
Yeah, I like the idea of having those characters from different backgrounds, like seeing and experiencing one another's parental and home lifestyles. I like that.
Yeah.
Did you have a favorite character in this episode? I feel like mine, I'm comfortable saying Vula was mine. What about you?
Mm, it would probably have to be Vula. I think mainly because when I was yelling at my TV, no one else was listening. She was the only one that was agreeing with me.
She was the
So it's
only one who
like
was like
I was,
following you.
yeah. So I mean, I was just frustrated with Lucy's behavior and not necessarily Stephanie's behavior, but her decision making or like just thinking things through. And I mean, on the same note as Vula being the only one that listens, one of the twins, I can't remember if it was Heather or
I don't
Erica.
know which one is
Final,
which, honestly.
hold on,
But
I did write it down.
okay.
I think.
Yeah, I
Okay,
don't.
it was Heather.
Oh, okay, yeah, I don't have a way to differentiate the twins yet.
I waited until someone said her name in like response to her,
And then
because
just
I
took
had to
note.
like go back and replay it to figure out which one of the twins that I liked. Um,
Which one was the one that you liked, Heather?
Heather, because I mean, it took her a little bit. At first, it was all like she was excited. He is a big celebrity. So she was on track with the other girls and really excited. And then something just kind of flipped in her brain. And she was like, no, wait, this is actually really wrong. Like, this doesn't feel okay anymore. It's not a silly schoolgirl giggle. It's you're meeting this person alone. And so I was glad that wake up was there.
Yeah, of like realizing like, oh, this is not a fantasy. Like this grown man actually wants to be alone with you. Like this is dangerous. And I like the conversation of like, oh, he's not a stranger, he's a TV star. Like you don't know this man just because you see him on TV. And I think that is actually really interesting commentary and like very nuanced for a TV show like all the way back then to be like, oh, you don't know this famous person. Like just because you see him on TV and read interviews, like you don't know this person. Because celebrity definitely creates
Yeah,
a
he's not
false
the same as
sense
the
of like,
script.
yeah, it was the original parasocial relationship. They were aware of the parasocial relationships before any of us were. I like that they acknowledged that power dynamic. Another question that I love to ask is favorite moment of the episode. Was there one that specifically stuck out to you?
I think my favorite moment of the episode was when Vula was over at Lucy's house and Lucy's mom had called saying that she was going to be late and they start talking about like Lucy being there all the time and she's kind of like it doesn't matter, this is how it always is. And Vula was she was hearing her. I mean, it wasn't just my friend is saying these words, like you can see the fear or like upset for Lucy kind of fill Vula's face. And I
Mhm.
felt that I mean, I it made me emotional. I felt like it was a really well written scene, and it felt very mature, especially for two 13, 14 year olds. I felt like the conversation and the openness between them was very well written.
I agree. I think Vula had a lot of empathy for Lucy's situation, and I think it was she is very mature, not like mature for her age, quote unquote, but like she is very like wise and like in touch
Yeah.
with like her emotions and other people's emotions. And that was something that I feel like I noticed in the first episode was that she was very like in tune with Stephanie's emotions and like listening to Stephanie's emotions and like trying to be there for her. And that's something that I really admire about that character and admire about that dynamic. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think that is a really good moment. I have my favorite moment is also from the Vula and Lucy storyline, but it's more of a fun one. And it is the escalator moment where they're going up and then the cop is at the top of the stairs and they're like, "Oh my God, yeah, let's run down." And then like, "Okay, you're gonna run down the escalator. That's really gonna work." And then there's the little like store person standing there with their crossed arms. It's so
Yeah.
dramatic. I also loved the in the store, the lady that was like watching them that pulled out the walkie-talkie with the like
The
3 foot long, like fucking gigantic. I'm like, what the hell? Like, where? I, people who were alive at that
the
time, was that actually the technology that was used? I have a question. Was that real or is that dramatic? I need to know.
that's where I kind of struggle with it being from the 80s too, because yes, I know that might be what it was really like, but watching it in 2024, it feels like it's a skit almost. Like you just
It,
see them pull out the antenna and
yeah,
it feels humorous to me because it's like that's not what it looks like.
it
Yeah.
takes you out of it for sure. One thing that I loved about that storyline as well, I don't know if you caught this, the officer that was like brought them back, it was talking to them about theft, was named
Mhm.
Officer Steels. I don't know if you heard that. I was
Oh,
like,
I did
that's
not
that's a little
catch
on the nose.
that.
So yeah, they had Officer Steels taking care of their stealing case at the mall. Iconic.
Yeah, I did not catch that. I also liked a part when they were in there talking to the officer, and it's not really anything to do with the episode, but I felt like it directly related to 2024 so much more when the officer or security guard was talking about like the repercussions of stealing. Like, that raises, we have to raise the price to cover it more. And I felt like that was something that I was like, okay, as an adult and someone who works in retail, I get it. And you know what? You're right. Like back, sometimes, or like when you're younger, you're like, it's not that big of a deal. It's a big corporation, but it's like it adds up. And I'm not trying to be that person because you're young, you only live once, but it's like in this economy, I get it. I get it.
Yeah, it adds up. And at this point, I feel like even just like the amount of money and time and like energy that employees have to spend towards like anti-theft measures is such a waste
Hmm.
of time, like time and energy versus like just don't steal things. I definitely am not gonna lie, I used to steal a lot, like from stores. Like I used to steal like lipstick and stuff like that. I was that
Yeah.
typical teenager who would just steal. And like when I first, I'm being vulnerable here. When I first moved out for college, I would like self-checkout was just becoming a thing. I just wouldn't scan all of my groceries and I got caught once and it was so
Or
fucking
everything's a
embarrassing.
Kool-Aid.
Yeah, yeah. It was
Oh.
like I would just like scan like every like other thing or just like skip the
Hmm.
expensive things and all that kind of stuff. And I got caught once and it was so fucking embarrassing. And I'm so lucky that they all they did was like just make me pay for everything and didn't like take me to the back and like
Yeah.
interrogate me or anything like that. Because yeah, there were so many times where I would just like throw stuff in my pocket or whatever as a teenager, then I never got caught. And then as an adult, I got caught, which really could have
Yeah.
gone wrong. I was over 18. I could have gotten in a lot of trouble. They
Yeah.
could have been a lot meaner to me, and I am very glad that I never experienced anything like Lucy or Vula where they got like taken back and taken to the cops and all that kind of stuff because that is terrifying. And yeah, I agree. I agree with you personally that like it does raise
Yeah.
prices. It makes everybody's life more difficult. It wastes so much time and energy for employees to have to like worry about people stealing things and get in trouble for people stealing things and all this kind of stuff. Like it's just a thing that makes everybody's life harder.
Yeah, and a lot of places that I've worked or like been in, yes, stores have insurance, if it's big theft or whatever, but a lot of times, the managers look at the cashiers and they're like, "Well, why aren't you trying harder?" And
Yeah.
it's like I tell, employees that I have and stuff all the time, I'm like, in a smoke shop, the most common thing to go missing is a lighter. I'm like, if they're going to take a dollar lighter, like if they're going to steal something, let it be the cheap stuff,
Yeah.
keep the expensive stuff hidden away, but it's like, I can't put it on you. You didn't take it unless you did,
Yeah.
but at
Unless
that
you did
point,
or
how
unless
am
you
I
like
gonna?
facilitated it. But like,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'm like, you know
Well,
what? Let it be what it is.
and I think little like stealing a little like candy bar or something like that is different than stealing. Lucy was stealing like big ass necklaces and like sweaters and all that kind of stuff. It's like, okay, you're asking to get caught and you're like just doing like if it's a sweater that's like too expensive to buy, then like yeah, I'm
Yeah,
not
if you're gonna
condoning
do it, go for
stealing
the
can yeah.
cheaper.
Exactly. Like and that's my logic, but then I'm like if you can afford to buy it then like why not just go ahead and buy it and not risk getting in trouble? That's my thought process at least whenever I'm in a store and I have that like little inkling. I'm like, "Oh, I could steal that." And then I'm like, "Okay, but I could buy it." Like
Yeah.
I could just buy
And
it and that's the better option.
yeah,
But
my thing is it's like, or like with Lucy and Vula, it's not that they're at like a supermarket or like a,
yeah, they're
Walmart
stealing
type store. They're at like a very big
department store.
department store. Like you are in
Yeah.
a very wide public place.
Yeah, I think I maybe would feel differently. Not that I'm like hard on these children for stealing. You got to learn the lesson, but like I think I would feel a lot
Yeah.
different about this storyline if they were just like in a convenience store stealing like a bag of chips or something like that. Then like that's
Yeah.
not a big deal. That's stupid, but like stealing a big ass like a whole sweater and like also I love that the necklace that she still chose to steal was like the loudest necklace on earth. It was like
Like big old beads. I know.
like
I was like,
girl.
there was nothing smaller, no bracelet.
No, like you're like folding this big ass necklace and like stuffing it in and like also how do you fit that? She like grabbed this thick sweater and like I'm like, what bag do you have that you're just shoving all this shit? It's probably like bulging out. That's probably for real why you got caught is this like big ass bag full of stuff. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's you gotta steal a little candy bar, a little not that I'm condoning again, not condoning
If you're gonna
stealing.
steal, do it smartly.
Exactly. Exactly. That is the moral of this episode. If you're gonna steal, do it smartly and don't get caught. Uh, um, have you ever shoplifted?
I don't Not anything that I could recall, except for, and I don't know if this is true or if this is just what my family has chosen to tell me. I do
Okay.
have a baby doll from when I was born that I supposedly stole with an unnamed family member. And I don't know if it's true, but I mean, I'm 26 and I still have the doll.
Yeah.
So, and she's still in her like pajamas from when she was a baby. I've kept her the same
I
way since I was a
mean,
child. So
wow.
I think that's the only thing I mean, say that I know of. And
Not
like you said, I wouldn't be shoving the world's loudest necklace into the
no,
world's
the
smallest
world's
bag.
loudest.
Like
Yeah, into like the fucking
it would
biggest
be a
sweater on
pack of
earth.
gum.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely used to have more of the urge to steal things, like I said, and now it's just like not worth it. Fun fact, the first time I got caught shoplifting, I was like, I don't even know, less than 10 years old. And I was at Old Navy with my mom and my sister, and they had these little like gumball machines for sale, like little mini gumball machines. And there
Uh-huh.
was like a gumball there, I guess, like that had gotten out of it, and I took
Mhm.
it and I was chewing it, and then in the parking lot, my mom was like, "Where did you get gum?" And then I like broke down crying and she like made me go in
Oh,
there and like talk to the employee and tell them what I had done. And like we went home and like my dad had friends over and she like told everybody what I had done and I was like traumatized because of this. I don't even count that as stealing, honestly. It was a gumball. Like in
finders
retrospect,
keepers.
like it's just, at the most it's a little gross that I just like took a loose gumball from like who knows who touched that. But like
Yeah, that
I
was your punishment.
I like it didn't stop me from stealing things later on in life, clearly. I still like stole makeup and stuff as a teenager, but like
You just didn't put it
I
in your mouth.
yeah, I just that's and honestly, that was a good I didn't get caught until I was in the parking lot. So maybe I should have just shoved all those groceries that I was gonna steal from Walmart into my mouth, and then I would have gotten away with it. That
Perfect. Just chubby cheek all the way out.
exactly. They would have never known. I've already got a little chubby cheek action going on. And that question was from Degrassi CSI, by the way, who asked if we had ever shoplifted. I for sure have. And in his comment, I believe he said that he did when he was a teenager. So I am not
Mhm.
alone. Glenn asked, "Is this episode believable to you, and do you think it's still relevant to today's teens?"
Oh, it's I think it is more I think it's even more relevant now in
Yeah,
today's teen or, in the 2020s, 2010s, 2020s. I think it is so much more relevant just due to the fact of like social media. It's so easy to not necessarily access celebrities, but access people that you don't know. I mean,
yeah,
it's terrifying. So I think if anything, maybe the setup of how they met isn't as
yeah.
relevant. I mean, they still
Because it
do
was
book
through
signings
TV,
or
but
movies.
yeah, it was through
Yeah, but
TV
I
and then a
think
newspaper, like a newspaper ad, I
yeah,
think. So,
yeah.
but other than that, I do feel like it did feel like it was like before its time, a lot of it.
Oh yeah.
So, I agree with that. It is believable and still very relevant. It's just more modernized now. It's people DMing on Instagram but it's
Yeah.
still the
Social
exact same.
media.
Social media. I'm
Um,
very familiar with the way that social media can allow for crazy dangerous situations.
yeah. And I mean, there's not always something wrong with meeting people on social media or else like I
We met
wouldn't
on
know
social media.
anyone in the Discord or anything like that. Yeah, but you have to be, I mean, very smart about it or just the way you go about it or who you're trying to approach. I think,
Absolutely.
finding random accounts necessarily on social media is really different. I'm not gonna say bad. I'm not gonna say it's different, but
Yeah.
joining like communities where it's not necessarily just one person and especially with like Discord was the perfect way to kind of jump into that because you
Yeah.
have like, there was video chats. It's not necessarily just typing the whole
Yeah.
time. So I definitely after like the first couple of weeks, it was definitely like, okay, these in my brain, it was like, these are real people. I am
Yeah.
speaking with real people.
Yeah. I think a sense of community and not having that one-on-one interaction can kind of help. Like the other people are vouching for each other in a way instead of having
Yeah.
interactions one-on-one online and being in that like isolated space. You Somebody can kind of present themselves however they want to present themselves and you can be manipulated a lot more easily than if you
Yeah.
are in a group setting. It's kind of harder for somebody to mold themselves into whatever just to please one, like they need to be able to please like it's, if that makes sense, like it's harder
Yeah.
for somebody to be manipulative to an entire group of people, at least effectively,
Yeah.
versus
That
one-on-one. It's
facade is going to crack somewhere.
exactly, it's so much harder to keep up a facade when you're trying to entertain so many sources versus if you're just one-on-one, it's very easy to manipulate.
Yeah.
That's why it's good to have a group date or, meeting in public and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And I think
Yeah.
Stephanie tried to be smart about it to get back to the episode a little bit because what he told her was, "Oh, we're going to go to the movie set. She, to her knowledge, was thinking, "Oh, we're going to be around a bunch of people. Like, I'm going to be safe." She tried to take precautions. I will give her credit for that. And then when she realized that he wasn't taking her where she was expecting him to take her, was when her alarm flag started going off and she started reacting,
Yeah.
you know.
Because I think she even was saying that to the twins. Like she said, because I think Heather had said something about like, well, you're not going to know where you're at or anything. And I think she made some type of comment along the lines of, well, it's always busy. Like there's always things
Yeah, there are people
happening there.
around. Yeah.
Like it's running 24/7, which
Yeah.
isn't, I mean, not necessarily how it
Oh,
works, but in a child's mind, it is. Do you think these
yeah.
people are doing this all day?
Well, yeah, think about it like how when you were a kid, at least for me, like I thought that the radio was literally like people in there like singing the songs live. Like I can imagine a kid thinking that, especially back then, like before you had knowledge of like how I could imagine them thinking, "Oh, they go in and they film the episodes like they're always at the studio, they're always doing that." Like she doesn't have knowledge of how that kind of stuff works. Now I need to know if you
Yeah.
thought that the little people in the radio were singing. Did you think that or am I know I'm not alone in that. Like, I know other people. Do you know what I'm talking about at all?
I okay, I mean I get what you're saying. I don't think I ever thought that, but I get it. Like
Yeah.
and you know what? Now I think it makes sense. I think it makes sense. I could
Yeah.
see myself thinking that. There's nothing in my brain that says
Remembers
I
thinking
thought that,
that, but
but I mean, I thought that a lot about like TV shows or movies, like reruns. I didn't understand that it was always like just a taping of something that had
yeah.
already aired. So it's kind of the same thing. Like I thought, they were having to act this stuff out multiple times, and I was like, how do people do this for this long? 5, 6
Yeah.
seasons. It wasn't until I was a little older that I was like, yeah, okay,
Oh,
that's not what reruns means. They're not trying it again
yeah, they're
to
not.
get it
Oh,
right.
wait, that's cute. I just connected that that's what you mean. Like they were doing like it's a play or something and they're doing
Yeah,
another
like
run of it.
we're gonna run it
That's
again, and I think
cute.
that's
I
where
love
I
that.
kind of came up with
Yeah.
that.
I love that. Okay, I feel a little less crazy for the whole people on the radio thing now that we both had a little thing like that. Yeah, I mean, yes, I think Stephanie tried to take the best precautions that she could for a 14-year-old, and I am gonna say I'm proud of her for that. I do understand getting swept up, especially with a celebrity, and I am proud of her for getting out of that situation as safely as she did, even though she got into the situation in the first place. I am not gonna judge a child for that. I think it's interesting that Degrassi a lot of the time puts these age gap situations in a bit of a blurred lines or like a where it's kind of I can't think of the right terminology where they make it a little bit like the Sav and Miss O thing. They made it as
Mhm.
like as so much that you can support the predator as much as possible.
Like
No, I don't
they
want to say that.
they kind of, yeah, not
They
in
give plausible
not necessarily a
deniability
bad way.
to
Yeah,
the
and they kind of
predators.
they give you a little bit of story about the older
Yes.
person to make you kind of want to like it. You want to
Yeah.
not necessarily like it,
No,
but
I
you want to
agree.
know more about what's drawing these kids to this person. And I think that might be a manipulation tactic on their end to show maybe more of the manipulation tactics that the adults are using. Like they're tricking you the same way that they're tricking the child,
I
if that
yeah,
makes
I
sense.
I agree. Yeah, it's they make it and I think this is a good move, I guess. They make it very like nuanced, where like Stephanie lied about her age. Not that it makes it okay that he was going for a 16-year-old, but like he wasn't going, I don't know the legality of all that, but like they make it so that like the aggressor kind of the older person, and I can think of this with like I said, Sav and Misso and Mr. Oleander and Paige, where like they just kind of blur the lines a little bit with these
Yeah,
situations and
especially
don't make them as bad as they could, if that makes sense. Like they kind of make it.
yeah, especially yeah, I think I kind of get where you're going with that, especially with like you said with Stephanie lying about her age. It's
Yeah.
one of those, yes, she lied and she was still only 16, but then
Yeah.
you're looking at it like, well, she lied to him. You know what I mean? Like even though
Yeah.
the number she lied with was still not a good
It's
number.
still not a
It
good
makes you
number.
want to say, why she lied, like kind of
Yeah.
almost to like blame her in a way.
Yeah. And I think that's yeah, that's something that happened with and I think maybe it's a case of like not wanting to make a perfect victim even, which is good, I think. Like with Paige's situation and Zoe's
Yeah.
situation, they both were not perfect victims. They both like were kind of putting themselves out there towards the people who ended up assaulting them, and that does not excuse what happened to them any way, shape, or form. But I think it's very interesting that in a lot of these situations, Degrassi does create that like plausible deniability or that like blurred like spot where you kind of have that like questioning instead of making it like cut and dry, which I
Yeah.
think makes you
Yeah,
think.
because I mean it's not always cut and dry. There
No, it's
are
not.
these situations where, one person is lying and they're underage. So it's not condoning Damon's actions
Again,
at
this is
all.
a
But
blanket. We are not
yeah,
condoning people being
yeah.
victimized in any situation, but we are
But I
just
mean,
speaking
that's
on the
a
interesting, yeah,
scenario.
that's
Yeah, it's a
reality.
scenario that it has happened, and whether the number that she used was good or not, they were both in the wrong. Him
Yeah,
more
more
so,
so.
but
He's the
she
adult,
was still
but
not innocent. Yeah.
yeah. And I put myself in dangerous situations as a teenager by lying and by like deceit and all that kind of stuff. That doesn't make it right for me. That also doesn't make it
Yeah.
right for the adults that engaged. Like I I'm a
Yeah.
bitch for nuance. I'm a slut for nuance. I love a nuanced situation. I love something that we can really dig into and talk about because I don't think it would have been as interesting if Stephanie went to like I'm not criticizing Degrassi or anything like that because I don't think it would have been as
Hmm.
interesting if Stephanie went up to him and said, "Hey, I'm 14," and then he was like, "Ooh, I love 14-year-olds," and then went and like creeped on her and all that. It's more interesting to have that like, oh, could Stephanie had done better? Like she's questioning herself, like could she have done better by not lying and all that kind of stuff. So while I am kind of pointing out, it's interesting that Degrassi creates these gray areas in a lot of these situations. I do think those gray areas make for more interesting drama and honestly more of a lesson to be learned. Like an imperfect victim and an imperfect protagonist creates a
Oh,
lot more room to grow.
absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. And I think especially with it being geared more towards, kids that are in junior high, high school.
yeah.
Um, I think it I think they I think they probably use that character, so in this case, like Stephanie, not only to like tell the story, but to maybe act as it like a mirror to the people that are at
Yeah.
home watching. Like, here are the outcomes of things that could happen. Pretend this is you instead of just,
Yeah.
being off on a borderline story. It's like, but make this character yourself and watch it play out.
Absolutely. And I think that's one thing that I really like about Degrassi is that it doesn't make the characters so like aspirational. They're not above the viewer. They're not somebody that you're
Mm-hmm.
necessarily aspiring to be. They're somebody that you can see yourself in and see mistakes that you're making and ways that you can improve yourself and ways that you can learn. I think, yeah, I think Stephanie and Lucy and Bula,
Absolutely.
honestly, all of the characters in this are a great example. And I think a mirror or a reflection is a great way to describe, I think, the way that Degrassi is meant to be viewed and experienced. So
Yeah, I mean,
I
and
love
that's
that.
how I experienced it, or that's kind of, I mean, even when I first started watching, that was, I think, what drew me to it the most is I could see storylines that related more with me or related with people I know, and I could see how it played out, or even, how the other characters reacted to one character's
Yeah.
storylines or the support or things, I could use it to like gear my friends away from maybe things that they were doing or anything like that. You could see kind of full circle around everyone and how
Yeah.
things were working.
Yeah. It allows you to kind of put yourself in somebody else's shoes and experience that with the fictional character and kind of learn those lessons without necessarily having to learn them yourself, which is really nice.
Yeah.
I feel like there are a lot of things that I saw on Degrassi because I grew up with Degrassi. Like I started watching Degrassi The Next Generation when I was like 7 or 8 years old. So it literally like molded my brain. Like I know that those like subconsciously even that those storylines like molded the way that I saw the world. So I'm really thankful for that, honestly, as like somebody who got to grow up with Degrassi. And I love that it's impacted you so much, even though you just started watching it a couple of years ago. You said you were in college,
Yeah.
so like
Yeah.
only a few years now.
It's
But
2016. Yeah.
that's crazy to me because yeah, it's and you have so much love and passion for it. So I love that. I think Degrassi is something so special that really grabs people that connect with it in this
Yeah.
very specific way. And then it allows us to connect with each other in that very specific way.
Yeah. Whether you're watching it, whether you grew up watching it or you're watching it older and looking back, like with the mirror thing again, it's not only, maybe these things are happening now, but oh my gosh, I remember when something like this happened to me, and you can kind of like reflect back on it and think, what did you do right? What did you do different? So it's got something for everyone, which I can
Absolutely.
very appreciate.
Yeah, it's got stuff that I can see myself in, and it's got stuff that I can see people around me in, and it allows me to understand their mindset better and understand even it's never a one-to-one with the Degrassi characters and the ways
Hmm.
that we relate to them and their storylines and all that kind of stuff, but it's enough that and I feel like we've had this conversation like in the community and all that kind of stuff of like you can definitely have an understanding of somebody as a person based on knowing their the Degrassi characters and the Degrassi storylines that they personally were impacted by and relate to. So
Hmm.
I um actually can I quickly turn to a question and ask you what Degrassi characters and storylines you relate to so that we can get a little
Go for it.
little insight on you. So what characters and storylines do you find
Is
yourself
this
relating to?
any of the generations?
Any generations, yeah.
I think the one I relate the most to, or at least character wise, is Maya. She deals with a lot of emotion. Some of her storylines I personally have not dealt with. They're hard situations, especially with like losing Cam and things like
Yeah.
that. That part, I don't necessarily connect with because I haven't had to experience it. But things like the way that she interacts with her friends, she's got such a big heart. She tries to do right by all of her friends, especially when like Tristan's with Mr. O. No, Tristan's with
Yeah.
what's his name?
Oh, Mr.
The
Yates.
the
Mr.
teacher. But
Yates.
she
Yeah.
tries to Yates, yeah, yeah. Especially when she speaks up for Tristan because she sees it's wrong. I haven't had to live through that exact experience, but just the way that she cares for her friends, and a lot of times everyone hates on her for being so involved or like overprotective.
That's what I
But
was gonna bring
I
up.
mean, I can see that she's not doing it out of jealousy or spite. Like she's trying to do what she thinks is right all the time.
Yeah.
And we watch her go from that young, bubbly girl experiencing life, and then we just see, her dealing with depression and PTSD and, all the things like that. And it's hard to watch, but I feel like a lot of times I'm on both sides of how I've seen Maya play out through the last like
Mhm.
4 or 5 years. So I think that's where I more connect with her is I see younger me, and then I see me out in the world or experiencing things.
Yeah. I think Maya had and I think I can definitively say this, the most consistent and well done arc over her time on the show, in my opinion. Like there are
Oh,
some characters that
absolutely.
really did it right. Like Spinner was good and all this kind of stuff, but I feel like the other characters flip-flopped a little bit more. Maya, I feel like was so well conceived and so well executed throughout the entire like everything that she did made sense to me and every like turn that they made in her story and every emotion that she expressed made sense from where she was coming from and I'm somebody who also very much relates to Maya, so maybe that's just me partially resonating with Maya, but I do think a lot of people also express that like she really over the seasons, like you said, she really develops a lot really well and very realistically over those years. So,
Yeah, I think they wrote Maya's character so well, and I think Olivia did an amazing job of
amazing.
portraying Maya. I mean, it can't always be on the writing. I mean, she brought so much life and emotion to her that I mean, she could also write it herself just on her facial expressions or actions. I
Yeah.
think the way she handled Maya came with so much grace.
No, I can think about like some of her facial expressions, especially in Degrassi Next Class, were like
Mm-hmm.
haunting. She is an amazing actress and is definitely a huge part of why that character succeeded so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shout out to Olivia.
Shout out to Olivia. We love you so much. Yeah, I think her character, yeah, makes the most sense over time. I don't know why I keep doing this this hand gesture for over time, but um
I do it too.
I'm gesturing a lot. Yeah, I think this episode was very interesting. I'm trying to think of kind of parallels with the later seasons of the show. Did any come to mind for you? I know I kind of thought of like Love Queen 16 and Connor a little bit and like Claire and Asher. I think it was definitely the car part of the Stephanie storyline that brought out
Mhm.
those memories for me. Was there anything that specifically came to mind with you during this
I
episode
mean,
for the
I
later
I
episodes?
definitely thought about Claire and Asher. I don't know how I didn't think of
Love Queen
Connor
16.
and Love Queen 16. Yeah, I don't that I'm surprised that I didn't that one didn't really hit anywhere with me. But it definitely, I mean, I felt like this is a story that Degrassi has done over and over again, and they do kind of take breaks on who the adult is in the situation. Maybe, you know, this time it was a celebrity. They've done
Yeah.
it a few times as a teacher or a stranger online. And
I I thought of a one to one, or not a one to one, but an example, the face range guy with Katie in the Vegas episode. I think that's the
oh,
closest thing to this, where
yeah.
it's a celebrity. Um, I think that's the closest one to
Yeah,
this whole
that's a good one.
situation. Because yeah, I agree. They cycle through like a teacher, somebody online, like Darcy met somebody online. Claire had like her mentor. It's an interesting, they always have something different going on. But yeah, I think this is the closest thing is the Katie face range guy thing, which
Yeah.
insane storyline.
Yeah, that one was rough. And I think, I mean, even though it is so similar, I think it was harder to watch Katie and the Face Range guy because that was closer to my age. That was, you know,
Yeah.
like we said in the beginning, the technology and everything like that, that one felt a lot more realistic to me.
I agree that that one felt a lot more realistic. I think the basic premise and emotion with the Stephanie storyline I like, but I do think it loses me a little bit with like, oh, it's a soap opera star and all that. It doesn't feel as grounded in reality to me as or relatable, I guess, grounded in the reality that I know personally as yeah, the Katie and
Yeah.
Mr. Face Range, whatever his name is. I don't know what that guy's name is. Yeah, that
We
feels
don't
more
need
like
to know it.
something whatever the creepy Face Range guy's name is. That feels more like something that could happen to us, I think, and that's why it maybe resonates more, even though
And
the
it
underlying
was
emotion with Stephanie is
and it
there.
was also a lot more organic, I feel like, with Katie because they met in this public place. It wasn't a setup to meet there.
Yeah.
You're not going to pick me up at this time. They were just both in the casino at the time, and I think the organicness of not having it built up from, oh, I'm going to go meet this person, to, oh, I met this person, and watching it play out and it just kind of happened, I think
Yeah.
definitely made it feel scarier too, because it can just happen,
Yeah.
it's not, everything's not written out schedule wise. Like with her having that time between the signing and meeting him, even even then when they, one of the twins was saying that they don't think it's a good idea, she wasn't listening. It wasn't
Yeah.
until it scared her that she was like, oh, like
Oh,
I need to
yeah.
listen. One note I did make with this book signing is, are there no other adults in this room?
No.
Like none? That
No.
one older lady got her book or whatever signed. No one else hears this? No one else sees what's happening? And that,
No.
I think, bothered me even more. So I think in that case scenario, like if it was directly after, I don't think it would have changed much because there was no one around to stop it either.
No. Nobody. There was literally just them and him in that room, and then whoever went
Yeah.
before and after Stephanie.
Yeah.
Yeah, weird ass book signing, by the way. Also, one autograph is one kiss. Ew.
Okay, and I did make a note of that, and yeah, I'm absolutely disgusted by that. But I will say it's not that, again, blanket, not condoning.
Yeah.
So if you watch, the girl that goes right before Stephanie is pretty dang close to their age, and he also does give her a kiss and the older lady that went right before them. So I think it's weird that he announced it,
Hmm.
but and I think it's weird that he did it
It's just
anyways,
weird.
but I think it's even weirder that he announced it because we watched it happen twice and he didn't vocally say those things, or he didn't say them to the older lady, at least
Yeah.
that we could hear. So him turning around and saying it to a child, that was weird. I mean, that was just kind of like, okay, again, no adults in this room.
Yeah.
No one's here.
Nobody's hearing you say that to a literal child. Like, okay. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Strange man, strange situation. Glad Stephanie got away from it safe because weirdo. Um,
Yes, I am glad that her fight or flight kicked in, and I'm very proud of her for having the knowledge. Like when he was kind of chasing her down outside of the car in the parking lot, she was like, I'm going to scream, like I'm going to
yeah.
draw attention. And I'm glad that in that fight or flight moment that she was ready to fight. Even though she
She
was
was.
absolutely terrified, I'm very proud of her for knowing how to scare him away.
Yes. Yeah. She immediately went into like, I'm 14 and I told everybody that I was going to be here tonight. Like, she was not holding back. And I am
Mm-hmm.
so proud of her. I'm proud of whoever taught her that those safety measures, because she absolutely killed it and reacted exactly the way you should react when you
Yeah,
inevitably get yourself into that situation, because teenagers are stupid and they get themselves into those situations. Stupid with love.
absolutely.
Like I mean that with love. I made so many stupid decisions and it is literally part of being a teenager. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And even as a teenager, you always think you're smarter and more mature than you are.
I
And
thought I was so
I was the
mature.
same way.
I was not
I
at
knew
all.
everything growing up. And now looking back, I'm like, I was a dumbass. I still am,
Yeah.
but damn, was I a dumbass.
I was so stupid. Yeah, no. And you truly think that you are the smartest, most like different teenager in the entire world when you're a teenager, and then you grow up and
Yeah.
you're like, "Oh, no. That's just how being a teenager
Yeah,
is."
it goes
What were you
back
gonna
to
say?
like, wow, my parents were right. Like they knew what they were doing, even if I didn't want to believe that they did.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, not everybody has good parents with good intentions, but for those who are lucky enough to have parents with good intentions who just want to protect them,
We love
you
you.
realize that. We love you. Yeah, I realize that now in retrospect that a lot of the time my parents were just trying to protect me. But it is in your DNA as a teenager to reject that and to think that you know everything. So I have so much empathy and understanding, and I think Degrassi definitely reinforces that because it makes me remember
Mhm.
what it was like to be a teenager, because I think some people can disconnect so easily from how it was like to be a teenager with your brain not fully developed and your hormones like going crazy. You're not going to make the best decisions. You just need to be able to be
Yeah.
in as safe an environment and with as supportive people, safe people as you can, because you're going to fuck up as a teenager. You're going to make stupid decisions. That's not like avoidable. in my opinion, at least.
Yeah,
Like,
and
it's
I
gonna
mean,
happen.
I think it's good for kids too. I mean, that's something that I've said many times, you know, yes, especially like having strict parents. I'm I'm always like, you know, I've told my dad this before too. I'm like, I yes, I know you want me to learn from your mistakes, but as a child, you have to learn from your own. You
Yeah.
know, not necessarily, I mean, any certain way, but I'm like yelling and screaming, that's only going to put a barrier between the child and the parent. You have to let them make these mistakes and like Stephanie, you know, be have to experience it and become scared. I will say I did make a note of that too. At the end of the episode, they ask about, I think one of the girls asked her about how her mom reacted because she
Mhm.
had to call her mom when she was at the hotel. And I put in there, I was so relieved that she said that her mom was mad, but not as mad as she thought she was going to be. Because I could only imagine not only the fear that Stephanie had, but the fear that her mom had when she called her. I mean, back to that, the yelling and screaming, it's not going to get anywhere besides put that fear in between the two people. So I was
Yeah.
very glad that her mom reacted rationally and in a way that she could educate Stephanie from this experience.
Yeah. And that Stephanie knew that she was just glad that she was safe. Like, that's the most important thing, I
Yeah,
think, that she came home knowing that the most important thing is that she was safe. And that is what she's going to carry into future situations, is that she can call and that she can count on her parents, or that she can count on her mom. And that is huge as a parent. Like, yeah, like you said, like
yeah,
yelling and punishing and all that kind of stuff. Yes, like kids should have consequences for their actions, obviously, but like screaming at them is not going to solve anything and not going to teach the lesson that you think it's going to teach them. So I'm really glad that Stephanie
yeah.
got a good experience out of. I kind of wish that we would have been able to see it, but I'm happy that we got to hear that at least.
That is one thing I did think about this episode is after that, I wish either it would have happened in this episode or maybe episode 10 would have started off with that ending, like a part one, part two, like Degrassi likes to do.
Yeah.
Because I think that could have been not only an important conversation for teenagers to hear, but maybe the parents that are watching this with their child to hear,
Yeah.
or some, you know, a child could be like, can we watch this specific scene together, please? Like, I think
Yeah.
that could have been a good conversation in households.
I do think Degrassi has some good scenes where the parents and the children have those conversations, and I think those are so important, like you said, for parents and children to be able to like watch together and see both sides of it,
Mm-hmm.
because yes, Degrassi is meant to represent the child's perspective first. I think part of being a child is learning to see, like, part of growing up is learning to see both sides of a situation and seeing that your parents aren't always out to get you, and that they're not just trying to ruin your fun, and that they are trying to keep you safe and just loving you and all that kind of stuff. And I think that is an important aspect of the show that I think they did well with a little bit early when they had like Joey with Craig and all that kind of stuff. I think it's hard to
Mm-hmm.
find a way to incorporate adults though in a way that doesn't take away from the children unless they are related to the kids, if that makes sense. And I think that's maybe what Degrassi struggled with, is finding that
Yeah.
balance of giving, because I think if I think about it, like the Bidari kids had some good interactions with their parents, and I think their parents had some good development. So there are definitely situations
Uh,
in Degrassi where we get those parent-child conversations that I think are very valuable. And I do wish that we got that with Stephanie, but I'm glad that we at least got that answer, that she was not as heavily punished as she was expecting to be.
yeah.
Yeah. So I know that you were kind of asked to prepare something for this episode. You have a little bit of a reputation, for those who may not know. You're a hot dog queen. You love hot dogs. You are known for your love of hot dogs. And recently you did an iconic PowerPoint presentation on the Degrassi Kid Discord that included, do you want to describe exactly kind of how you related Degrassi to hot dogs?
Yeah. So I took I took a few of the most notable characters or my favorite characters, just kind of a mix. And I even took some people from the Degrassi Discord. And
Iconic.
on my PowerPoints, I tried to find hot dogs that either a resembled something about them or their storyline, or just maybe even my opinion of them. So some of them might have been a little bit harsh. But I try to, yeah, relate hot dogs to these characters and put them in my world. So I know I did a few. I can't remember everyone off the top of my head, but I know I did like Drew Torres. He is very childish. So I
Mhm.
gave him like, I think it was like boiled hot dogs, like something so basic that I was like,
Yep.
he wouldn't even want ketchup with it.
Yep.
Or I did Fiona with like hot dog earrings or a ring or something like that, because she wouldn't actually eat a hot dog, but
She would
maybe like when she
accessorize.
was
Yeah.
working at the juice place, they had to wear the hat with the fruit on it. So maybe if she had a different job, she would wear that.
Yeah.
Or Peter, I gave like extra onions because of his halitosis storyline.
I was gonna
So I
say,
was
yeah, his
trying
bad
to like
breath.
relate it, yeah,
I
relate it
love that.
directly to
Um,
the characters.
do you have any uh characters from this episode that you can relate to hot dogs, perhaps?
Okay, I did, and some of these might only make sense in my head.
No, I'm here
Um,
for it. That's the best. That's the best kind of thing.
I know for Stephanie, I put corn dogs, or like more specifically mini corn dogs. They are very childish. They're not what they think they are, but they're still
Wow.
good. We love them. It's just, there's some room for improvement. She can grow. Lucy, I put I want to say I put like microwaved hot dogs, but not in just a quick, easy way, but it is something very like standalone, very independent. Just make it and it's done. And I think
Yeah.
part of my decision and that also stemmed from her being home alone. I, especially knowing that she likes to steal things or do things, I don't know if I necessarily trust her with like an oven or like a stove or fire.
She's a
So I
little
wanted
chaotic.
something that she's a very chaotic character, especially because like in the beginning she was like, well, I can fail school if I want to. Like
Yeah.
she is going through those teenage emotions and she's just all over the place. So I tried to stick with something very basic that I could trust her making when she's home alone.
Yeah.
And then I had something for Damon and I don't remember what it was, but I know it was not good. I could tell you that much.
I would hope
And
not.
I think I even put on my description, I was like, because I don't like you. So I don't remember what it was, but that's gonna bother me
I love that. We have a little mystery now. If you
now.
listeners, tell us what kind of hot dog you think the creepy Damon King
Absolutely. Please
is.
let me know. And I
Please.
will find my answer. I think it's in my
I'm
car.
curious, do you Vula? What is she? What kind of hot dog is she?
I think she's just a classic, maybe ketchup and mustard, add a little bit of emotion or like variety to her. But
I
I
could
think
see her being a
she's
relish
just very
girly. How do you feel about that?
maybe, but like if her parents aren't around because they don't like relish, but like if she was eating it in maybe like the cafeteria, maybe.
Yeah.
But I definitely think just like a plain or very lightly dressed hot dog. She does try to experiment on her own a little bit, and we see it earlier on in the series when she like tries to go to the dance and everything like that. We see her try to become her own person, but she also is very kind of stuck in the pattern that she knows.
Yeah. She would think that putting relish on her hot dog was like edgy and different. For sure.
Yeah. but
That's
that's why I'm like maybe in the cafeteria, but maybe not at home.
like to show off. Like it's like
Yeah.
Lucy put some relish on her hot dog and she's like, "Oh yeah, I put relish on my hot dog all the time too." That's my Rula impression apparently. I love her. I think
Or
she's
she's
so
like
sweet.
trying to like tell her parents she has the power, but like they're not there. Like, you know, I did this without them knowing. Like just
I can do
it was
whatever I
always
want.
the without anyone knowing. Yeah.
Yeah, she's a rebel in her own head, and I love that for her. I just wanted to shout out Degrassi Kid and James, who both asked that hot dog question. They were both dying to know. And James also asked if you have a Degrassi Junior High crush at all.
Joey Jeremiah. He is so goofy, and that is like
Oh my
exactly
gosh.
my type, especially if I were to put myself like back at that age. That was
Yeah,
definitely, I mean, it's always about the class clown, the one that makes everyone laugh. That it's the personality of that character. And even when we see him as an adult, he has those little jabs every once in a while that it's like he hasn't changed much. And I love
yeah.
that.
Which character do you feel like is the closest to like a Taylor self-insert out of this cast of characters? I don't know if I have one that I would necessarily say I relate to. I don't know if I'm like any of these girls necessarily. I'm not like other girls. I'm not like these 14-year-old
I'm
Degrassi
different.
girls from the 80s. I'm different. I don't know
I'm
if I have an
so
answer to
different.
that question, but I'm curious if you do.
I think I could see little bits of maybe Stephanie in there, or it's just little tiny portions. I mean, I'm not necessarily one or another,
Mhm.
but I think maybe even, and it may not even be the character themselves, but maybe more or less storylines. I think I could see a little bit of Stephanie and maybe a little bit of Vula. Um,
Yeah.
maybe Steph, and the weird part is I think the parts that I see are completely different from each other. Like
Yeah.
Stephanie wants to be adventurous and all this, and Vula doesn't. And I think that's kind of my night and day. Like I I'm both of those people at once. There's days I want to go do things or I don't want to
Yeah.
be involved in
Put yourself out
anything.
there.
Yeah, it's there's two different sides, and I can see both of those in my own eyes.
Yeah, I think that makes the characters very human too, because I agree that I can see little segments of myself and all of them. Like I can see myself and I agree that I can see myself a little bit in like Stephanie. From what I know of Melanie, I can see myself a little bit in Melanie as well. Like I can see,
Mhm.
and it depends. Yeah, I don't know. I was asking that question because I was curious, like, if you feel like your crush Joey would like you, or if you feel like he would like make fun of you, because those are the two options with Joey. I feel like he either like is very nice to
Yeah, he's
you or an asshole to you, depending on if he likes you or not. And I think he would probably bully me, but
I don't know because I think like in the beginning when Stephanie is running for is it for class president,
yeah,
um she, Joey's trying his hardest to be with her, and she has some little snippets where she's almost like bullying him but not bullying him, but kind of knocking him back down a little bit, and he's not taking the hint. And I think that is something I could see myself doing, like not necessarily bullying, which
yeah,
sometimes it's okay,
just
but
having that, yeah,
um
that dynamic.
yeah, that yeah, the dynamic between the two, or just those little jabs that keep the other coming back, because you could also see that she did like the attention whether it was from him or not. So I think that was very important for both of their characters to be involved in that manner.
Yeah, I agree. I think they have a very interesting dynamic. And I know we discovered in the Degrassi archives that the show was initially setting up for Stephanie and Joey to have the teen pregnancy storyline, like that
Mm-hmm.
Spike ended up having. And I think that could have been very interesting. I don't know enough about early Spike yet to know like how that'll play out, because to me, I can see Joey and Stephanie having a baby or like being getting pregnant being very interesting, but it also does feel kind of like predictable in a way, versus I feel like I'm expecting
Yeah.
Spike to be a little bit more unpredictable because she's been like in a couple of scenes as this like very nice like quiet shy girl. So I'm hoping, I think that's a little bit
Yeah, you
more,
just see her in passing.
yeah, versus Stephanie is kind of, I don't want to say like, oh, she's the person that you would expect to like get pregnant or anything like that, but like stereotypically in the way that like teenage girls are presented in media, she is typically the character that would get that
Yeah.
storyline. So I'm excited to see.
Yeah, they bring her to the forefront in the beginning. So it is nice to know, or to see that maybe it's not always who you would expect. And I think that is important that they made that decision, that it's not necessarily the most popular person
Yeah.
on either the male or female side or
Yeah.
anything. It's always it could be any single person.
Well, that yeah, that makes me think of, and it actually is interesting because they did the mini. I was gonna say with Liberty getting pregnant, I feel like you would more expect like Paige to get pregnant, and then they literally have that Degrassi mini where what if Liberty and Paige switch places, and so I think maybe
Yeah.
that was commentary on how Paige is more likely to be the stereotype of the character that you would expect to get pregnant, like
Yeah,
how
like no one
Liberty, like
expected
yeah,
it. Yeah.
exactly, and the way that I feel like Stephanie is kind of that character that you would expect to have that storyline. So I'm glad that we're gonna. Unfortunately, I know that Spike is the one that gets pregnant. I'm spoiler free, quote unquote spoiler free, but like that's the biggest spoiler ever, and it's literally the reason the next generation exists. So sorry, friends. I know that that happens.
I do think it is important that they did follow that that storyline, not Spike and Emma, but the
Mhm.
expecting it to be a certain person when they did Jenna and Casey, especially because they had already drawn her as this boy crazy guy,
Mhm.
stealing him from Claire. I do like that in the show multiple times we see the person we expect and the person we don't at the same time.
Yeah, I think Degrassi did a really good job of every teen pregnancy storyline has something different going on and impacts a different character in a different way. Yeah, and like you said, sometimes it is like the character that you would expect, like the like hypersexual character who's like putting themselves out there and all that kind of stuff, and that's not shaming hypersexuality. I feel like this is such a blanket statement of like we're not shaming anybody, any
Do
of
who you
that.
want.
Do who you want, but like be safe, obviously, whatever. But like I do think, and then yeah, like Jenna, and then there's Liberty, and then there's Claire, and all of these characters that have different upbringings and different storylines leading up to them becoming pregnant and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. This is just our little off the rails discussion about Degrassi pregnancy storylines and how I think we really appreciate the range, I think is basically what we're saying.
Can I point out you did not say Lola?
I did not say Lola. Oh my gosh, what? Yeah, I know. That's insane to me that I did not include Lola's. I was thinking about it, but I somehow did not include it in that because I agree. She is another character where I feel like we get a really different perspective and a really get
Yeah.
different experience and a different outcome. So, shout out to
Yes.
Lola. I'm so sorry to my girl. I swear I love you. I
Come
didn't forget
on.
about you. I'm sorry. I'm this is my brand. I gotta make up for it. Let me talk about Lola for like 5 minutes straight, real quick, to make up for it.
So I think them putting Stephanie and Blah as the two parts of the big storylines in this episode together, like at the same time, was really important. Especially in the beginning of the series, we see when they were friends and working on the election, we got to see a little bit about Stephanie's home life and how, she would come to school and change clothes and do her makeup. And Vula was just kind of like, why are you doing that? Like, why and I feel like she almost kind of felt pressured in a way, which is why she ended up trying to go to the dance and, disobeying her dad.
Hmm.
And I think watching both of these stories play out specifically in the same episode, we got to see Vula try to, I mean, she never once changed who she was or how she was acting. But like her putting herself around Lucy put her in this position to be, she got arrested. And
Yeah.
that's something that you wouldn't expect from her, but it's not anything that she did either. So I felt like her putting herself in a position where, or she didn't even really put herself in that position.
Yeah, her
Lucy
getting
put
into
her
that.
in that
Yeah.
position. So I felt like it was, yeah, I felt like it was crazy to see just really the wrong place at the wrong time happen to someone that had no intention of doing that versus seeing someone who has constantly put herself out there in such a way that Stephanie has. And both characters go
Yeah.
through something really traumatic in two separate like ways.
I think it's really interesting and it shows kind of the point that I was speaking about earlier of like teenagers are going to get into these situations regardless. It doesn't matter kind of like you can try to be a safe place and you can like do your best, but like these things are going to happen, and trying to set kids up to react the best in these situations is important. Yeah, I do think it's interesting to put those kind of like polar opposite characters in a way in these situations and kind of
Mm-hmm.
see how they react. Honestly, I don't know. I'm trying to yeah, it's interesting because I think if we put them in each other's shoes, they definitely would not have reacted the same. So it's nice to see those different characters because I'm thinking about like
Yeah.
Stephanie, I feel like would have just gone along with Lucy and just gotten into trouble. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think she would have
I
gone
think
along with
I
it?
think she would have been up for the adventure. I mean, it
Yeah.
was something simple, but also it was something that, I mean, it's illegal. So I feel like
Yeah.
she would have, I think she really would have went along with Lucy. But when it comes to like if you were to flip the script, I don't think Vula would have ever
Gotten
went
herself into that
solo somewhere with
situation.
Damon. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I definitely think it speaks a lot on, again, their like emotional or mental maturity.
Yeah.
Because I think if it were any other way with any other characters, it would not have been, it wouldn't have gone anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Vula and Stephanie were both the right characters and like the most interesting characters to choose for these storylines. So I think it was,
Yeah.
and it's interesting to see, yeah, like you said, kind of the continuation of that dynamic that we saw in that first episode of these two girls that experience life and experience the world in very different ways and put themselves out to the world in very different ways going
Mm-hmm.
through these situations. I don't know. I love it. I'm glad, yeah, that we kind of got them paired in this episode, but not really paired because they weren't interacting with each other, but we're still comparing them in a way. We're still kind of putting them on this equal playing ground and talking about them in the same conversation, which I think is nice and I think is really like good. It's nice to kind of put those
Yeah.
characters up against each other and talk about them.
I also, in that, in the ending with uh, Lucy and Vula, I got very kind of angry with Lucy because when you were talking about the escalator ride,
Mhm.
and on the escalator, Lucy just kind of like shoves the bag at Vula, like putting in her
Yeah.
hand. After this whole time that Vula was saying, "I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this," and the moment I mean, cinematically, it worked great, but I think the
Mhm.
moment that she put the bag in Zula's hand, I just got very like angry for Zula. I was very like, you did nothing wrong, babe. You're fine.
Yeah, her boundaries were being completely like violated in that like Lucy was not thinking
Hmm.
about anything other than like what she wanted to do in that moment, which is how children act. Like not criticizing
Yeah.
Lucy, but like I do, yeah, I did definitely feel for Vula because she is somebody who is just trying to do the best that she can and like support her friend, and she
Hmm.
stated several times like you said that she didn't want to do this, and it was, yeah, it was hard to see her put in the situation that she very vehemently did not want to be in. And
Yeah.
I felt bad for her that she was just really just trying to be there for her friend and trying to, she literally came from a place of just like seeing Lucy struggling with her grades even and trying to help her, and then got kind of roped into all of this. So I don't know, Bula, I'm so
But
sorry. You're just
it
a
was
baby.
and it was frustrating because even at the very end of the episode, Lucy says something and Vula's like, "Well, do you want to study again?" Like the cycle just started over again. And that's where they chose to leave it. And that's where I was
Yeah.
like, oh, come on. Like, did nothing that happened yesterday matter to you? Like, come on.
Yeah.
But again, she's got such a big heart.
Do you feel like that could be kind of like a toxic cycle that she's getting herself into? I feel like she is the type to get herself into some like
Oh, absolutely.
toxic friendships. Like
Yeah.
her and
And even,
Stephanie are
I mean,
definitely not
at
healthy.
that level, yeah, no, and in that ending scene, just where Vula was instantly like, "Do you want to study again?" It took me to Maya and Miles, like, and her accepting his poor behavior, even though he had hurt her so many times.
Yeah.
It felt like that's exactly to where I felt with it. I was like, I've seen this story before.
I think I've seen this film before and I didn't like the ending. Yeah. I can agree. I
Exactly.
think that is a really good comparison of Vula is the type of person who will put herself in situations that are not necessarily the best for her because she has such a big heart and she cares about her friends so much. At least in this
Yeah.
episode, I feel like that's what I'm getting. I feel like she was more willing to walk away from Stephanie, but I don't know, maybe she didn't feel like Stephanie needed her help as much. I feel like she's definitely her heartstrings are getting pulled with seeing Lucy struggling and having that like lack of parental affection. And I think she's maybe more willing to kind
Yeah.
of because I feel like she drew
Because
some boundaries a little better with Stephanie versus Lucy. She's going
yeah.
back real quick.
And I think maybe the reason that she felt more okay to walk away from Stephanie versus Lucy is the problems that Lucy's having aren't ones that she created. Whereas Stephanie has, she has this home life and she's choosing to come to school and act like a completely different person. Whereas Lucy's doing the best she can
Yeah.
with kind of raising herself from what we can see so far.
I think that's a really good point of her kind of having more empathy for Lucy because she didn't, like you said, kind of like create her own problems in the same way that Stephanie
Mm-hmm.
is, yeah, like going to school and changing her clothes and like everything, at least in Vula's eyes, that Stephanie is going through is kind of a result of choices that Stephanie is making. And those choices are literally
Yeah,
Stephanie just trying to express herself and be a teenager. It's not like she's doing anything inherently harmful, but it is, I think Vula can see that of like Stephanie's action.
you chose this.
Stephanie's taking these actions versus Lucy is more a product of her situation in Vula's eyes,
Mm-hmm.
I think. And she's more has different empathy for that situation. And I think Lucy also is willing to let Vula in a little bit more versus Stephanie's a little more abrasive. At least that's the impression that I'm getting from those characters. And
Yeah,
obviously that I think Lucy, I don't know, is a little nicer most of the time versus Stephanie.
most of the time, yeah.
Well, and I think it's implied that Stephanie and Vula have like years of friendship, and I don't know how long Vula has been friends with Lucy, but maybe she's more willing to give Lucy some lenience because she hasn't dealt with years of the same thing.
Yeah,
Versus, although I know Stephanie is
yeah.
implied to have changed pretty recently, like she had her little New Year, new look, new Stephanie moment at the beginning of season one. So I don't know. It's interesting to think about and kind of wonder what the history of that friendship is and kind of how it impacts the way that Vula acts in her current relationships. Because I think that does impact the way that she is treating Lucy, her
Yeah.
history with Steph. I think we're about done talking about What a Night. I feel like we have had a great discussion about both the episode and Degrassi in general, which is my favorite thing to talk about. Fun fact. I have an important question for you, Taylor. Would you eat a hamster?
Yes, no
Yes, just
hesitation.
straight up yes. Okay, and
Yeah,
I have this question about some characters in this episode, actually. We're gonna do a little
okay,
lightning round, actually, and yes or no, whether
okay,
you think these characters would eat a hamster.
okay.
Okay, are you
I
ready?
think I'm ready. I
Okay.
think so.
Vula,
No,
Lucy.
yes. Did you see the unwrapped sushi plate she pulled out of the fridge?
No,
I
okay,
think
yeah.
she
Can
would
we
eat a
talk about
hamster.
her mom being like, there's sushi in the fridge? Like, okay, unless that sushi was literally placed there this fucking morning and it's
It
unwrapped,
was,
like, that shit's gonna make you
I,
sick.
yeah, I paused as soon as I saw that. And I don't eat sushi, I don't eat seafood at all. But
Yeah.
even I know that it should not just be
Should be
unwrapped out in the
covered.
in the
Yeah.
open like that.
No.
So yes,
Would
I
you
think
eat would
she
you eat
would.
hamster sushi? It's not
No.
fish. Okay. Would Joey eat a
Well, maybe,
hamster?
maybe.
Well, maybe.
Yes,
Would Joey eat a hamster? Yes. Oh, Joey would
ab-
love to eat. Joey would
absolutely.
brag about it for the rest of his life if he ate a hamster.
It would be his personality trait. He'd get a
he-
tattoo of it.
He would, I was gonna say he would get a t-shirt, but you're right. He would get a tattoo that said I ate a hamster, like right on his like forearm. I'm
Yeah.
trying to think of other characters. Would Snake eat a hamster? I don't feel like we really know enough about baby Snake.
I don't, yeah, Baby Snake, I
A
don't
snake
think
would
we
eat a
know
hamster
enough.
in
A
real life.
snake,
A snake.
except for Archibald.
Like a snake in general, they eat mice, so I feel like they would eat a
Yeah,
hamster, but like
yeah, probably.
Archibald, I don't know. Okay, I don't know. None of the other characters I feel like we know well enough at this point to know if they would eat a hamster because we're on the same playing field, and I feel like
Yeah,
who who was the last episode about? Oh, would LD eat a hamster?
no.
Would Jeff the mechanic eat a hamster?
Absolutely.
Jeff the mechanic would eat a hamster.
I,
Oh,
I
shout
think
out
Jeff the a little,
Tom
we're gonna go
Melissus.
back an episode here.
Yeah.
Jeff the mechanic would eat a hamster. Karina would eat a hamster. Tom Melissus would not eat a hamster.
I think we have yapped and yapped, and I feel pretty good about this. How do you feel, Taylor?
Yes, thank you. I feel
Of
good.
course.
I'm
I feel
excited.
good.
I think I decided I'm gonna watch them as you do, like as your episodes come out, because
I love
I'll
that.
watch it and then I want to know everyone else's thoughts because then it'll feel like I'm talking to you.
I love that. Yeah, you can. I love like listening to podcasts in that way of like watching along with stuff. So I love that I have at
Mhm.
least one person. I feel like it's hard to find an audience of people who haven't seen it for a show that's like 30 something years old, but I'm glad that you are going on this journey with me, and I'm excited for you to watch Smokescreen, which is the next episode. I appreciate you so much, Taylor. I am excited to share this episode with the world and let the world see how hilarious you are. And I just want to say thank you so much for coming on Degrassi Schools In.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm excited and it was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. Thank you so much, Taylor. I love you.
Yes.
All right. Wait.
Did you take your
We
selfie?
gotta I did not take my selfie. We can technically take one. I'm gonna stop the recording, but we can chat for a minute after. But I do want to take the selfie real quick. Oh, where's my camera? Where's everything? Oh, there's my camera. Okay. Um, okay. I gotta find a way to position. I'm just snapping some. All right. I think I got a good one. Um, okay, wait, I'm still recording. Okay, I want to make sure that we say bye
Just
Panthers.
watching.
Just like watching, I'm gonna make that bonus content of just us taking a selfie. Okay.
Trying.
There is one more thing. There's one more thing that we have to say before we go, Taylor. Do you know what it
Okay, you
is?
ready?
All
You ready to
right.
say it?
All right, I'm ready to say it. Bye,
Okay.
Panthers.
Bye, you Panthers.
Bye.